The smaller boy's fingers were blue. That was the first thing Eliza Mercer noticed when she stepped off the stagecoach into the bitter Wyoming wind. Not the empty platform where her future husband should have stood. Not the older boy's hostile glare, but those tiny fingers, purple with cold, reaching up toward her like she was the last warm thing left in the world. She had come 1,000 miles to marry a rancher. Instead, she found 2 orphans waiting in the snow. Subscribe now and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this tale travels. The smaller boy's fingers were blue. Eliza Mercer stood frozen on the platform, her worn carpetbag hanging from numb hands, staring at those tiny fingers reaching toward her through the driving snow. The child couldn't have been more than 6 years old, his coat too thin, his boots cracked and leaking. Behind him an older boy, maybe 10, stood with his arms crossed, his jaw set hard against whatever disappointment he expected her to deliver. "You the mail order woman?" the older one asked. Eliza set her bag down slowly. The stagecoach driver was already hauling her trunk off the back, eager to be done with this godforsaken stop and move on to somewhere warmer. She'd been traveling for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of jolting roads and suspicious looks and cold meals eaten standing up. 3 weeks of second-guessing every decision that had led her here. "I'm Eliza Mercer," she said. "And yes, I suppose I am." The smaller boy stepped closer. His lips were chapped, his nose running. "Pa said you might not come. He said ladies always change their minds." Something in Eliza's chest cracked open. She crouched down her knees, pressing into the frozen ground, and took those cold little fingers between her palms. The boy flinched at first, then leaned in hungry for warmth. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Benjamin. But everybody calls me Ben." "Well, Ben, I'm here now, and I don't plan on changing my mind." The older boy made a sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a scoff. "That's what the last one said too." Eliza looked up at him. His eyes were the color of winter sky, pale and hard. There was a fresh bruise on his cheekbone, half hidden by the brim of his hat. "And you are Samuel, Sam." He uncrossed his arms just long enough to pick up her carpetbag. "We got a wagon. Pa sent us to fetch you." "Your father isn't here." "He couldn't come." The way he said it flat final told Eliza not to ask why. She stood brushing snow from her skirts. The town behind her was small. A mercantile with frost on the windows. A saloon with light spilling out onto the street. A church steeple rising up against the gray sky like a finger pointing toward heaven. Not a soul in sight, except a dog nosing through a snowdrift, and an old man watching from the saloon porch, his eyes following her with something that might have been pity. Ben tugged at her sleeve. "Are you cold, ma'am?" "A little." "Me too." He slipped his hand into hers, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "But the wagon's got blankets. Sam always brings blankets." Sam was already walking toward a buckboard hitched to 2 tired-looking horses, her bag over his shoulder. He didn't look back to see if she was following. Eliza followed anyway. The ride to the ranch took nearly an hour. The road was rough, half-frozen ruts that made the wagon lurch and groan. Snow fell steadily, coating Eliza's shawl, gathering in the creases of the blanket Ben had spread across their laps. Sam drove in silence, his face forward, his hands steady on the reins. Ben wedged between them, talked enough for all 3. "Pa's ranch is called the Double M. It was Grandpa's ranch first, then Pa's. We got cattle, lots of cattle and horses too. My favorite horse is named Patches because she's got a white patch on her face. Sam says I can keep her if I take care of her proper. I do every single day. Do you like horses, ma'am?" "I've never ridden one." Ben's eyes went wide. "Never. I grew up in a city, Philadelphia." "What's a city like, crowded?" Eliza said. "Noisy. Full of people who don't look at each other." "That sounds lonely." She hadn't thought of it that way before, but he was right. "It was," she admitted. "That's part of why I left." Sam spoke without turning. "What's the other part?" Eliza hesitated. She could feel both boys waiting, Ben openly curious, Sam pretending not to care. "I was married once," she said carefully. "My husband died 3 years ago. Fever took him. After that, there wasn't much left for me there." Ben's hand tightened on hers. "Our ma died too. 2 winters back. She got real sick and then one morning she just—" His voice wobbled. "She just didn't wake up. I'm sorry, Ben. Pa don't like to talk about it. Sam neither." Ben glanced at his brother. "But I remember her. She smelled like bread. She used to sing when she washed the dishes." Sam's jaw tightened. "Tommy, what I'm just telling her. She don't need to hear about Ma." The words came out harsh, and Ben went quiet, shrinking into the blanket. Eliza watched Sam's profile, the rigid line of his spine, the way his hands gripped the reins too tight. "It's all right to remember her," Eliza said softly. "Remembering isn't the same as hurting." Sam didn't answer, but after a moment, his shoulders dropped a fraction, and some of the tension bled out of his grip. They rode the rest of the way in silence. The ranch appeared through the snow like something half forgotten. A low house with a sagging porch, a barn that needed paint, a corral where a few horses stood huddled against the wind. Beyond it, Eliza could see nothing but white. Miles and miles of white stretching out toward a horizon she couldn't find. A man stood by the corral fence. He didn't turn when the wagon approached, didn't move at all, just stood there with his back to them, one hand resting on the top rail. Snow gathering on his shoulders like he'd been standing there for hours. Sam pulled the wagon to a stop. "Pa, we got her." The man turned. Caleb Morrison had a face that had been carved by weather and war. Lines around his eyes, a scar running from his left temple down to his jaw white against wind-burned skin. His hair was dark shot through with gray, and his eyes, when they finally met hers, were the color of smoke. He looked at her for a long moment. She looked back. Neither of them spoke. Then Caleb took off his hat, an old gesture almost courtly, and held it against his chest. "Miss Mercer. Mr. Morrison. I wasn't sure you'd come. I'm here." The words hung between them, heavy with everything they weren't saying. Eliza could feel the boys watching, feel the weight of their hope and their fear pressing against her like a physical thing. Caleb cleared his throat. "Boys, help Miss Mercer with her things. Show her to the spare room." "Yes, sir." Sam jumped down from the wagon, suddenly all business, but Ben grabbed Eliza's hand first. His small fingers still cold despite the blanket. "Come on, I'll show you everything." She let him lead her toward the house. At the door she looked back once. Caleb was still standing by the corral, his hat in his hands, watching her go. And the expression on his face, she couldn't read it. Couldn't tell if it was relief or regret or something else entirely. The house was small but clean. That surprised her. She'd expected bachelor squalor, dirty dishes, clothes on the floor, the particular neglect of a household without a woman's hand. But someone had swept the floors recently. Someone had hung the curtains straight and wiped the dust from the windowsills. Ben pulled her down the hallway. "This is the kitchen. That's where Pa sleeps. That's me and Sam's room. And this—" He pushed open a door at the end of the hall. "This is yours." The room was simple. A narrow bed with a faded quilt. A washstand with a chipped basin. A window that looked out over the eastern pasture, or would when the snow wasn't falling so thick. "It was Ma's sewing room," Ben said quietly. "Before." Eliza set her carpet bag on the bed. "It's lovely. Pa cleaned it himself. Took him all day." Ben perched on the edge of the mattress, watching her unpack. "He wanted it to be nice for you." "That was kind of him." "Pa's always kind. He just don't show it much." Ben paused. "Are you really going to stay?" Eliza turned to face him. His eyes were so wide, so hopeful, so terrified of hoping. "I'm going to try Ben." "The other lady didn't stay. She came last spring and she took one look at the place and got right back on the stagecoach." Pa was real quiet after that, for a long time. Eliza's throat tightened. What was wrong with the place? I don't know. Sam says she was a fancy lady from back east. He says she expected something different. Ben picked at a loose thread on the quilt. We ain't fancy, but we're good. Ain't that enough? She sat down beside him on the bed, took his cold hands between hers again. You're more than enough, she said. Both of you. Ben's face crumpled. For a moment she thought he might cry, but he just leaned into her side, his thin shoulder pressing against hers, and let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for a very long time. That night, Eliza cooked her first meal in the Morrison kitchen. She found the pantry half empty, some dried beans, a bit of salt pork, a few potatoes going soft in a basket. Not much for 4 people, but she'd worked with less in the boarding houses back east. She set the beans to soaking, fried the salt pork with onions she found hanging in the root cellar, and made do. When she called them to the table, all 3 of them, Caleb and his sons, sat down with the careful movements of people who weren't used to this, to someone taking care of them. Caleb said grace, his voice low and rough, and then they ate in silence. Eliza watched them. The way Sam cut Ben's meat without being asked. The way Ben kept glancing at her between bites like he was making sure she was still real. The way Caleb's hands, scarred and calloused, held his fork too carefully like he was afraid of breaking something. This is good, Caleb said finally. Thank you. More silence. Then Ben piped up. Pa, can Miss Eliza stay forever? Caleb's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Sam went still. Eliza felt all their eyes on her waiting. That's Miss Eliza's decision, Caleb said carefully. But do you want her to, Ben? It's a fair question. Eliza set down her own fork. I came here to marry your father, Ben. That was the agreement. But marriage is a serious thing. We need time to know each other first, to see if this is right for everyone. How much time? I don't know. Enough. Ben considered this. What if you don't like us? I already like you. What if Pa don't like you? Caleb made a sound that might have been a cough or a laugh. Ben, that's enough questions for one supper. But Pa, enough. Ben subsided, but he shot Eliza a look that clearly said they'd continue this conversation later. After supper, Sam disappeared to the barn for evening chores, and Ben dragged Eliza to his room to show her his treasures, a collection of interesting rocks, a bird's nest he'd found last summer, a wooden horse his grandfather had carved before he was born. Pa made me a box for my things, he said, pointing to a rough wooden chest under the window. He ain't good at carving like Grandpa was, but he tried. Eliza ran her fingers over the box's lid. The joints were uneven, the wood rough in places, but someone had sanded it smooth where small hands would touch. He loves you very much, she said. I know. Ben yawned hugely. Ma used to tuck me in every night. She'd sit on the bed and tell me stories till I fell asleep. After she died, Pa tried, but he don't know any stories. He just sits there looking sad. Would you like me to tuck you in tonight? Ben's face lit up. Would you, if you want? I want. He scrambled into bed, pulling the covers up to his chin. Miss Eliza. Yes? I'm glad you came. She smoothed the hair back from his forehead. It was thick and dark like his father's, and badly in need of a cut. I'm glad I came too, Ben. She sat with him until his eyes grew heavy and his breathing slowed, and then she sat a while longer watching the snow fall past the window and wondering what exactly she had gotten herself into. She was leaving Ben's room when she nearly collided with Caleb in the hallway. He stepped back quickly, his hands coming up like he was warding something off. Sorry, I was just... It's all right. They stood there in the dim light, close enough that she could smell the cold on him, the leather and wood smoke, and something else. Something that might have been exhaustion. You tucked him in, Caleb said. He asked me to. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He studied her face like he was trying to work out a puzzle. Why? Because he needed it. Because someone should. Something shifted in Caleb's expression. That hard mask he wore cracked just for a moment, and underneath she glimpsed something raw, something wounded. His mother used to do that, he said quietly. Every night. After she died, I tried, but... He stopped, shook his head. I ain't good at that part, the soft parts. You're good at other parts. Am I? The boys are fed, clothed. The house is clean. That takes work. Any fool can keep a house clean. Not any fool, Eliza said. Not when they're also running a ranch alone. Not when they're grieving. Caleb went very still. I ain't grieving, he said. Margaret's been gone 2 years. Grief doesn't follow a schedule, Mr. Morrison. He flinched at that. Actually flinched like she'd struck him. I should let you rest, he said abruptly. It's been a long day, for both of us. He turned to go. Mr. Morrison. He stopped, didn't look back. Thank you, Eliza said. For the room. Ben told me you cleaned it yourself. A long pause. Then so quietly she almost missed it. I wanted it to be nice for you. He disappeared into the darkness of the hall, and Eliza stood there for a long time, listening to the house settle around her, the wind howling outside, the faint sound of Ben's breathing from the room behind. She thought about the letters she'd exchanged with this man over 4 months. Careful letters, practical letters, letters that talked about the ranch and the boys and the work that needed doing. He'd never written about loneliness, never written about grief, never written that he was drowning. But she could see it now, in the shadows under his eyes, in the way he held himself like something inside him was being held together by sheer will. In the way his sons looked at him with love, yes, but also with worry. The particular worry of children who know their parent is not all right. Eliza went to her room and sat on the bed in the darkness. She thought about Philadelphia, about the boarding house where she'd worked for 4 years after William died, cooking and cleaning, and watching other people's lives through windows, while her own stood still. About the morning she'd seen the advertisement in the newspaper, Rancher seeks practical woman for marriage of convenience, and something in her chest had cracked open. She'd written the first letter that same night. She'd told herself it was practical, a fresh start, a chance to be useful, to be needed, to build something instead of just surviving. But sitting here now in this cold room at the end of the world, she admitted the truth. She'd come here because she was dying of loneliness. And maybe Caleb Morrison was too. The next morning, Eliza woke before dawn. The house was cold. The fire in the main room burned down to embers. She rebuilt it quickly, then went to the kitchen to start breakfast. By the time the first gray light crept through the windows, she had coffee brewing and biscuits in the oven. Ben appeared first, still in his nightshirt, his hair sticking up in all directions. You're still here, he said. I told you I would be. I know, but I had to check. He climbed onto a chair at the table and watched her work, peppering her with questions. What was she making? Where did she learn to cook? Did she know any songs? Could she teach him to read better? Pa tried to teach him, but Pa got frustrated sometimes, and Sam said he was too stupid to learn. But he wasn't stupid, was he? You're not stupid, Eliza said firmly. Reading takes practice, that's all. Will you practice with me? If your father allows it. He will. Pa wants us to learn. He just don't have time to teach us proper. Sam came in, then already dressed, his face red from the cold. He'd been to the barn, Eliza guessed, doing chores his father should have been able to do. Pa says he'll be in for breakfast, Sam said. He's finishing up with the sick calf. Sick calf? Born wrong. Pa don't think she'll make it, but he's trying. There was something in Sam's voice, resignation maybe, or just the weariness of someone who'd seen too many things not make it. Eliza set a plate of biscuits on the table. Sit down. Eat something. Sam hesitated, then sat. He ate quickly, efficiently, like someone who'd learned not to waste time on meals. These are good, he said finally grudgingly. Thank you. Better than Pa's. I heard that. Caleb appeared in the doorway, stamping snow from his boots. There was blood on his sleeve, the calf Eliza guessed, and exhaustion carved into every line of his face. The calf? She asked. Didn't make it. He sat down heavily, reaching for a biscuit. Lost cause from the start, but I had to try. Ben's face fell. I wanted to name her. I know, son. I'm sorry. They ate in silence after that, but it was a different silence than the night before, less wary, more weary. The silence of people who'd shared a loss, however small. After breakfast, Caleb pushed back from the table. Sam and I got to ride the north fence line today. Check for breaks before the next storm comes through. When will you be back? Late. Maybe not till after dark. He paused, his hand on the door frame. Will you be all right here with Ben? We'll be fine. He nodded. Then, almost as an afterthought, there's more beans in the cellar, and some preserved peaches if you can find them. Margaret put them up the summer before. He stopped, swallowed. They should still be good. I'll find them. He left without another word. Eliza watched him go, then turned to find Ben watching her. Pa don't talk about Ma much, he said, but he kept all her peaches. Won't let nobody touch them. Maybe he'll let me. Maybe. Ben slid off his chair. Miss Eliza. Yes. Pa's real tired. He don't sleep good. I hear him walking around at night sometimes, and when I look through the crack in my door, he's just sitting in his chair staring at nothing. Eliza's heart clenched. Grown-ups carry heavy things sometimes, Ben. Things they can't put down even when they want to. Can you help him put them down? Such a simple question, such an impossible answer. I can try, she said. That's all any of us can do. The day passed slowly. Eliza cleaned, mended, found the preserved peaches buried in the back of the root cellar, dust-covered but intact. She stood there for a long moment, holding one of the jars, thinking about the woman who'd put them up. Margaret Morrison, who had sung while she washed the dishes, who had tucked her boys in every night, who had loved this man and this land enough to spend her summer afternoons preserving peaches for winters she wouldn't live to see. I'll take care of them, Eliza whispered to the empty cellar. I promise. She didn't know if she was talking to Margaret or to herself. That afternoon she sat with Ben at the kitchen table and worked on his reading. He was behind, far behind, but eager, so eager it broke her heart. He sounded out words with fierce concentration, his small finger tracing each letter. C-A-T, cat. Perfect. H-O-R-S-E, horse. Exactly right. He beamed up at her, and for a moment, she saw it, the ghost of the boy he could have been, should have been, if his mother hadn't died and his world hadn't cracked in two. Ma used to teach me, he said quietly, before she got sick. She said reading was the most important thing. She said books could take you anywhere, even if your feet were stuck in one place. Your mother was a wise woman. I know. I miss her. Eliza reached out and smoothed his hair. You can miss her and still be happy, Ben. Those things can both be true at the same time. He considered this. Can you miss someone you don't remember? What do you mean? Sam remembers Ma real good. He was 8 when she died, but I was only 4. I remember some things, the way she smelled the songs she sang, but not her face. Not really. His voice dropped. Sometimes I'm scared I'll forget everything, and then it'll be like she was never real at all. She was real. She's real. Every time you think about her, every time you tell a story about her, every time you eat one of her peaches. Eliza took his hands. The people we love don't disappear, Ben. They live on in us, in the things they taught us, the love they gave us. That never goes away. Ben's eyes filled with tears. I wish you'd come sooner, he whispered. And Eliza, who had promised herself she wouldn't get too attached too fast, felt something in her heart crack wide open. Caleb and Sam returned well after dark. Eliza heard the horses first, then Boots on the porch. She'd kept supper warm, the preserved peaches stewed with a little sugar alongside the last of the salt pork, and a fresh batch of cornbread. When Caleb came through the door, he stopped dead. "Is that—" He stared at the table. "Are those Margaret's peaches?" "I hope you don't mind," Ben said. "No." His voice was rough. "No, I don't mind. I just—" He sat down heavily, still staring at the jar. "I couldn't bring myself to open them. Seemed like once they were gone, she'd be gone too." "She's not in the peaches, Mr. Morrison." "I know that. She's in your sons, in this house, in you." He looked up at her then, and his eyes were bright with something he was fighting hard to control. "You've been here one day," he said. "How do you already understand more than I do?" "I don't understand anything. I'm just—" She hesitated. "I'm just willing to try." Sam slid into his chair, eyeing the food. "We gonna eat, or we gonna talk?" Ben giggled, and the tension broke. They ate together. And this time, there was conversation, stilted at first, awkward, but conversation. Sam talked about the fence line. Ben talked about his reading lesson. Caleb asked questions actually asked and listened to the answers. And Eliza watched them become slowly, carefully something that might someday be a family. After the boys were in bed, she found Caleb on the porch despite the cold. "You'll freeze out here," she said. "I'm used to it." She sat down beside him anyway. The snow had stopped falling, and the sky had cleared. Stars blazed overhead, more stars than Eliza had ever seen in her life. "It's beautiful," she said. "It is." They sat in silence for a while. Then Caleb spoke, his voice low. "The ranch is in trouble, Miss Mercer." Eliza's heart stuttered. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that don't go away with wishing." He stared out at the dark horizon. "I got debts. Bad ones. The drought 2 years back killed half my herd, and I had to borrow to rebuild. Bank payments due in 3 months, and I—" He stopped, started again. "I ain't got it. Not even close." Eliza felt the cold seep into her bones. "Why didn't you tell me this before? Would you have come?" "I don't know." "That's why." He turned to look at her, and his eyes were hollow. "I needed help. The boys needed a mother. Those things are true whether I'm rich or poor, but I should have told you. I should have given you the choice." "You're telling me now." "I am." She thought about the letters, about the careful, practical words that had hidden so much, about the woman who'd taken one look at this place and gotten back on the stagecoach. What happens if you can't make the payment? We lose everything. The land, the house, the cattle. My father built this place with his bare hands. His father before him. 4 generations of Morrisons, and I'll be the one who let it all fall apart. His voice cracked on the last word. Eliza reached out and took his hand. It was rough and cold, calloused from years of work. "Then we don't let it fall apart," she said. "We figure out how to save it." He stared at her. I didn't come 1,000 miles to watch you lose. I came to build something. If the building's harder than I expected." She squeezed his hand. "I've never been afraid of hard work. You don't even know me." "I know enough." "Do you? I know you love your sons more than your own life. I know you've been carrying this alone for too long. I know you sent 2 children to fetch me because you couldn't bear to watch another woman look at what you had and find it wanting." Caleb flinched. "I'm not her," Eliza said softly. "Whoever that woman was last spring, I'm not her. I don't want fancy. I don't want easy. I want—" She stopped, searching for the right words. "I want something worth fighting for." He was quiet for a long time. The stars wheeled overhead. The wind whispered through the snow. Then slowly his fingers tightened around hers. "It won't be easy," he said. I know. It might not be enough. I know that too. But you'll stay anyway. It wasn't a question, but she answered it like one. I'll stay. He let out a breath, long shuddering like he'd been holding it for years. All right then, he said. All right. They sat there together on the frozen porch, holding hands in the darkness, while inside the house their son slept, and the fire burned low, and somewhere out in the Wyoming night, the future waited, uncertain, terrifying, and theirs. The days fell into rhythm like a heartbeat. Eliza hadn't known she was missing. She woke before dawn every morning, stoking the fire, starting coffee, setting biscuits to bake, while the house still slept. By the time Caleb and Sam came in from early chores, breakfast was waiting. By the time Ben stumbled out of bed, rubbing sleep from his eyes, there was warm food and a warm kitchen, and someone who smiled when she saw him. You don't have to do all this, Caleb said one morning, watching her scrub the cast-iron skillet. We managed fine before. You managed. That's not the same as fine. He didn't argue. Couldn't really. She'd seen the state of their clothes when she arrived, buttons missing seams, splitting hems dragging. She'd found the mending pile stuffed in a basket in the corner of the main room, untouched for what looked like months. I ain't good at the soft parts, he'd told her that first night. She was starting to understand what he meant. 2 weeks in, Eliza had established her territory. The kitchen was hers. The mending was hers. Ben's reading lessons every afternoon at the table while Sam and Caleb worked outside. The tucking in at night, the stories she made up because Ben asked for them, the way his small hand reached for hers in the darkness. Tell me about the princess again, he'd whisper. Which princess? The one who crossed the ocean to find her family. So she'd tell him. About a princess who left everything she knew to travel to a strange land, who found 2 princes waiting for her, who learned that family wasn't about blood, but about choice. Ben always fell asleep smiling. Sam was harder. He watched her with those pale, wary eyes, looking for cracks, waiting for her to fail. He was polite barely, but distant. He didn't ask her questions, didn't seek her out. When she served him meals, he said thank you and nothing else. He don't trust easy, Caleb said one evening when Sam had gone to bed early without a word. Not since his ma. He was close to her. He was her shadow, followed her everywhere, helped her with everything. When she got sick, Caleb's jaw tightened. He tried to take care of her, 8 years old, trying to do what I couldn't. When she died, something in him closed up. Ain't opened since. He'll come around. You sound sure. I'm not, but I'm patient. Caleb looked at her with something like wonder. You're something else, Eliza Mercer. It was the first time he'd used her first name without the miss in front of it. She pretended it didn't make her heart skip. The first real test came 3 weeks after her arrival. Caleb had ridden to town for supplies, leaving Sam in charge of the morning chores. Eliza was kneading bread when she heard the scream. Ben. She was out the door before she knew she was moving flour still on her hands, her shawl forgotten. The cold hit her like a wall, but she didn't stop. Ben's screams were coming from the barn. She found him on the ground outside the corral, clutching his arm, his face white with pain. Sam was already there, kneeling beside him. What happened? Horse spooked. Sam's voice was tight. Threw him against the fence. Let me see. Eliza crouched down gently, taking Ben's arm. He whimpered, but let her look. The angle was wrong. She'd seen enough broken bones in the boarding houses to know. It's broken, she said. I know. Sam's face was pale too. We gotta set it. Can you do that? I seen Pa do it once, on a calf. Ben let out a sob. I ain't a calf. Hush, sweetheart. Eliza smoothed his hair with her clean hand. Sam, can you ride to town, fetch the doctor? Take too long, storm's coming, if we don't set it now. He was right. She could feel it in the air, that heavy pressure that meant snow. All right. She took a breath. Tell me what to do. They carried Ben inside between them, laid him on the kitchen table. Eliza found whiskey in Caleb's room medicinal, she told herself, and made Ben take a swallow. He coughed and sputtered, but some of the tension left his small body. "This is gonna hurt," Sam said. "You got to hold him down." Eliza positioned herself at Ben's shoulders, her hands firm but gentle. "Look at me, Ben. Keep looking at me." "I'm scared." "I know, me too. But Sam's going to fix it, and then it'll feel better, I promise." She nodded at Sam. He moved fast, pulling and twisting in one smooth motion. Ben screamed a sound Eliza knew she'd hear in her nightmares, and then went limp. "He fainted," Sam said. "That's good. Means he won't feel me splinting it." Eliza watched him work his young hands steady and sure, wrapping the arm with strips of cloth, binding it to a piece of flat wood. "Where did you learn this?" she asked. "Pa and Ma before." He didn't look up. "Ranch life, you learn to fix things yourself. Can't always wait for help." When he finished, he sat back on his heels, and for the first time since she'd arrived, he looked like what he was, a 10-year-old boy, exhausted and scared. "You did good, Sam." He looked up at her, surprised. "I mean it. You stayed calm. You knew what to do. Your pa would be proud." Something flickered in his eyes. He looked away quickly, but not before she saw it, the desperate hunger for approval that he worked so hard to hide. "We should move him to his bed," he said gruffly. "Help me carry him." They moved Ben together, settled him under his quilts. Eliza sat beside him, holding his uninjured hand, while Sam hovered in the doorway. "You can go," she said. "I'll stay with him." "I'll stay too." So they stayed, both of them, sitting on either side of Ben's bed while the storm rolled in outside, and the boy they both loved slept through the worst of his pain. Caleb came home to a dark house and a cold barn. He burst through the door like a man expecting the worst, snow in his hair, fear in his eyes. "What happened?" "Where?" "He's all right." Eliza met him in the kitchen. "Ben had an accident. Broken arm." Sam said it. "Sam..." "He was incredible, Caleb. Cool as you please, hands steady as a surgeon." Caleb pushed past her, heading for the boys' room. She heard his voice low and rough, and Ben's sleepy answer. Then silence. When Caleb came back out, his eyes were red. "Thank you," he said. "Both of you. I should have been here." "You couldn't have known." "I should have been here anyway." He sat down heavily at the table, his head in his hands. "This place is killing me, Eliza. Killing us. And I don't know how to stop it." She sat down across from him. "Tell me." So he did. All of it this time, not just the debts, but the details. How the bank wanted $300 by spring. How he'd been counting on selling cattle in March, but the herd was smaller than expected, and prices were down. And even if everything went perfect, he'd still come up short. How he lay awake every night running numbers in his head, trying to make them add up different, and they never did. "I'm going to lose it," he said. "I can feel it. And there ain't nothing I can do." "There's always something." "Like what?" Eliza thought about the boarding house, about the years she'd spent cooking and cleaning, watching pennies, making something from nothing, because that was what survival required. "I can sell my baking in town," she said. "Martha Caldwell's been asking about my bread. I could make pies too. Preserves. Things people need but don't have time to make themselves. That's pin money. Won't make a dent. Pin money adds up. And maybe," she hesitated, "maybe there's other work. Sewing, laundry, women's work that men don't think about but pays steady." Caleb looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "You do that taking washing to save a ranch that ain't even yours." "It could be mine. That's why I'm here, isn't it?" He stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he reached across the table and took her hand. "Eliza Mercer," he said. "You are the strangest woman I ever met." "Is that a compliment?" "Might be." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "Might just be." The storm lasted 3 days. They spent it huddled together in the house, all four of them, while the wind howled and the snow piled up against the windows. Ben recovered quickly, as children do, and was soon demanding entertainment. Eliza taught them card games she'd learned in Philadelphia. Caleb told stories about his father, about the early days of the ranch. Sam even contributed reluctantly at first, then with growing enthusiasm. "Tell about the time Grandpa fought the bear," Ben begged. "That's just a tall tale," Sam said, but he was almost smiling. "Tell it anyway." So Sam told it, his voice taking on a cadence Eliza hadn't heard before, the rhythm of a born storyteller. She watched Caleb watching his son, saw the pride and the pain mingled in his face. On the second night, after the boys were asleep, Caleb found her by the fire. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Never can during storms." He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Bad memories." "Of what?" "Margaret died during a storm like this." His voice was flat. "February 2 years ago. She'd been sick for weeks, but we thought—" He stopped. "Don't matter what we thought. She went in the night while the wind was blowing. I woke up and she was cold beside me." Eliza didn't say anything. Some griefs were too big for words. "I couldn't bury her for 3 days," Caleb continued. "Ground was frozen solid. So I wrapped her in her favorite quilt and put her in the barn, and every morning and every night I'd go out there and sit with her and tell her I was sorry." "Sorry for what?" "For not being enough, for not saving her, for—" His voice cracked. "For being relieved, God help me. She suffered so much at the end. And when it was over, there was this horrible moment when I felt relieved. What kind of man feels relieved when his wife dies? A man who loved her. A man who couldn't stand to watch her hurt anymore." Caleb turned to look at her, and there were tears on his face. Real tears, the kind he probably hadn't shed since the day he buried Margaret in the frozen ground. "I ain't cried since she died," he said. "Not once." "Maybe you needed to." "Maybe I did." They sat there in the firelight while he wept, and Eliza didn't try to comfort him with words. She just put her hand on his and let him grieve. When the storm broke, so did something else. Sam came to breakfast on the 4th day and sat down in his usual place. But instead of eating in silence, he looked up at Eliza and said, "Thank you for staying with Ben when he was hurt." Eliza nearly dropped the coffee pot. "You're welcome, Sam. And for—" He struggled with the words. "For what you said, about Pa being proud of me. He is proud of you. He tells me so all the time." Sam's eyes went wide. "He does, every day. He says you work harder than any man he's ever known, that you've got your mother's steady hands and your grandfather's stubborn streak." The boy's face transformed. Just for a moment, the hard mask slipped, and underneath was the child he still was desperate for his father's approval, starving for it. "He never tells me that," Sam said quietly. "Then I'll keep telling you for him, until he learns to say it himself." From that day forward, Sam was different. Not warm exactly, that would take time, but thawed. He started asking her questions at meals, started bringing her firewood without being asked, started calling her Miss Eliza instead of just ma'am. It wasn't much, but it was something. The trip to town came sooner than Eliza expected. "Martha Caldwell's having her monthly gathering," Caleb announced at breakfast one morning. "The women expect you." "Do they?" "Word travels fast out here. Everyone knows about the mail-order bride at the Morrison Ranch. They'll want to look you over." Eliza's stomach nodded. "Lovely. You don't have to go, but if you don't, they'll talk. They'll talk either way." "True." Caleb almost smiled. "But at least this way you can control the story." So she went. Caleb drove her himself, which raised eyebrows before they even reached the Caldwell house. Sam and Ben stayed home, Sam promising to watch over his brother with the same gravity he might have promised to guard a fortress. Martha Caldwell's house was the nicest in the county. Real glass windows, actual wallpaper, a porch that didn't sag. Eliza climbed the steps feeling like she was walking into a lion's den. She wasn't wrong. There were 8 women in Martha's parlor perched on chairs and settees like birds on a wire. All of them turned when Eliza walked in. All of them smiled, but only some of the smiles reached their eyes. "Mrs. Morrison," Martha said warmly, "we're so glad you could come." "Miss Mercer, actually. We haven't married yet." A ripple went through the room. Martha's smile flickered. "Of course. Miss Mercer, please sit down." Eliza sat. Accepted tea she didn't want. Felt every eye in the room cataloging her dress too plain, her hair too simple, her hands too rough. "So," a sharp-faced woman said, "you're the one who answered Caleb Morrison's advertisement." "I am." "Brave of you. The last one didn't last a day." "So I've heard." "I'm Prudence Hawkins." The woman extended her hand with the air of someone conferring a favor. "My husband owns the bank." Eliza's blood went cold. "How nice for you." "It's a responsibility, really. So many families depend on us." Prudence's eyes glittered. "The Morrisons, for instance. I do hope Caleb's managing all right out there. It's been such a struggle for him since poor Margaret passed." "He's managing fine." "Is he?" "That's not what I've heard." Prudence leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've heard the ranch is mortgaged to the hilt, that the bank payment's coming due and he hasn't got a prayer of meeting it, that he's one bad month away from losing everything his family built." The room went silent. Eliza set down her teacup with a deliberate click. "What I hear, Mrs. Hawkins, is a woman who knows far too much about other people's business and far too little about minding her own." Someone gasped. Prudence's face flushed red. "I beg your pardon." "You should. You should beg Caleb Morrison's pardon too for spreading rumors about a man who's done nothing but work himself to the bone trying to provide for his children. But I don't expect you will." Eliza stood. "Thank you for the tea, Mrs. Caldwell. It's been enlightening." She walked out with her head high and her heart pounding. She was halfway down the porch steps when she heard footsteps behind her. "Miss Mercer, wait." It was Martha Caldwell, her kind face creased with concern. "I'm sorry about Prudence. She's got a mean streak a mile wide, always has. Her husband's been after the Morrison land for years, and she likes to needle." She was telling the truth, wasn't she? About the debts. Martha hesitated, then nodded. "Caleb's situation is difficult. The whole county knows it. But that doesn't mean you have to run." "I'm not running." "No." Martha studied her face. "Then what are you doing?" "I'm fighting, or I'm going to be." Eliza looked back at the house at the windows where she could see silhouettes gathered watching. "You said you wanted my bread, Mrs. Caldwell. My pies. Were you serious?" "I was." "Then I'll make them, as many as you can sell. And anything else I can do sewing, mending, whatever brings in money. Every penny goes toward that debt." Martha's eyes softened. "You really care about him, don't you?" "I care about those boys. I care about not letting a good man drown when there's something I can do to help. And Caleb himself." Eliza thought about the nights on the porch, their hands intertwined. About the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. About the grief he'd finally let himself feel weeping in the firelight while she held his hand. "I'm beginning to," she admitted, "more than I expected." Martha smiled. "Then welcome to Stillwater, Miss Mercer. I think you're going to fit in just fine." Caleb was waiting by the wagon when Eliza came around the corner. One look at her face, and he was on his feet. "What happened?" "Nothing I couldn't handle." "Eliza." Prudence Hawkins happened. She climbed up onto the wagon seat. "Apparently her husband owns the bank, and she thinks that gives her the right to air your business to everyone in the county." Caleb's face darkened. "What did she say?" "The truth. That you're in debt. That you might lose the ranch." Eliza looked at him steadily. "Why didn't you tell me Hawkins was the banker?" Didn't think it mattered. It matters. Everything matters. I can't help you if I don't know what I'm fighting. Caleb climbed up beside her, took the reins. For a long moment, he just sat there staring at the horses. Hawkins has been after this land since my father's time, he said finally. He made an offer to buy it outright about 5 years back. Pa told him to go to hell. After Pa died, he made the same offer to me. I told him the same thing. And now he owns my mortgage, and he's been waiting real patient for me to default so he can take what he couldn't buy. Caleb's jaw tightened. His wife spreading rumors about my finances ain't gossip. It's strategy. Make sure nobody in town will extend me credit. Nobody will do business with me. Nobody will help. Isolate me until I break. Eliza felt a cold anger settle in her chest. Then we don't break. I told you before, Caleb. I'm not going anywhere. She put her hand on his arm. And I just made a deal with Martha Caldwell. I'm going to start selling baked goods in town. Sewing too if I can get the work. Eliza, that's not... Don't tell me it's not enough. I know it's not enough on its own. But it's something. It's a start. And I'd rather fight with everything I've got than sit back and watch that woman win. Caleb stared at her. Then slowly he laughed. What's so funny? You, standing up to Prudence Hawkins like that. I wish I could have seen her face. It was very red. I bet it was. He was still laughing, a genuine sound she'd never heard from him before. God, Eliza, you're something else. So you keep saying. He sobered, but there was something new in his eyes, something warm. I'm starting to think it's the highest compliment I know how to give. The ride home was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Comfortable, easy, like something had shifted between them, some wall come down. When they pulled up to the house, Ben came running out, his splinted arm held carefully against his chest. Miss Eliza, Pa Sam made stew, and it's terrible, but he tried real hard, so we have to pretend it's good. Eliza laughed, the sound surprising her. Then we'll pretend. And after supper, can you tell me a story? The one about the princess. If you eat your terrible stew, yes. Even the carrots. Especially the carrots. Ben groaned, but grabbed her hand with his good one, and pulled her toward the house. Eliza looked back at Caleb, still sitting in the wagon. You coming? She asked. He smiled. Actually smiled, a real one that reached his eyes. Yeah, he said. I'm coming. That night, after the stew was eaten and the stories were told and the boys were tucked in, Eliza found Caleb on the porch again. She sat down beside him without asking. Thank you, he said, for today, for standing up for me. I wasn't standing up for you. I was standing up for us. The word hung in the air between them. Us. Caleb turned to look at her. In the moonlight, his face was all shadows and angles, but his eyes were bright. There's something I need to tell you, he said. What? I got a letter last week, from the Army. I applied for a beef contract months ago before I wrote to you even. Supply cattle to Fort Bridger through the winter. Eliza's heart leaped. And... They're considering it. I made the short list, but they want to inspect the herd first. Send someone out to make sure I've got what I claim. He paused. If I get that contract, it's enough. More than enough. It would pay off the bank and leave us clear through spring. That's wonderful, Caleb. It's a chance. Just a chance. His voice was rough. But it's more than I had a month ago. When do they come, the inspectors? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Eliza took his hand. Then we've got 2 weeks to make sure everything's perfect. The herd, the ranch, everything. Stop saying that like it surprises you. She squeezed his fingers. I told you, Caleb. We're in this together. That means all of it, the good and the bad, and the terrifying middle parts. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, soft and reverent. I don't deserve you, he said. Probably not. He laughed, and she laughed with him, and the sound carried out into the cold Wyoming night like a promise. 2 weeks, she thought. 2 weeks to save everything. She didn't know if it was enough time, but she was going to find out. The 2 weeks passed faster than Eliza thought possible. She worked until her hands cracked and bled. Baking through the night, delivering to Martha Caldwell at dawn, rushing home to help with chores. Caleb and Sam rode out every morning to check the herd count heads, cut out the weak ones that wouldn't pass inspection. Ben helped where he could, his arm still splinted, but his spirit fierce. They were a team, a family almost. And then 3 days before the inspection, everything fell apart. Caleb came in from the range with a face like stone. 20 head, he said. Gone. Eliza's hand stilled over the bread dough. Gone. What do you mean, gone? Rustlers. Cut the fence on the north side and drove them off. Sam found the tracks this morning. Can you get them back? Maybe. If I ride now, if I follow the trail before the snow covers it. He was already moving, grabbing his rifle from above the door. I need you to stay here with the boys. Keep them inside. Lock the doors after dark. Caleb, wait. He stopped, turned. His eyes were wild with something she'd never seen before. Fear. 20 head is the difference between making that contract and losing everything, he said. You understand, if I don't have enough cattle when the army man comes, it's over. All of it. Then go. Find them. I might be gone 2 days, maybe 3. We'll be fine. He crossed the room in 3 strides and took her face in his hands. His palms were rough and cold against her cheeks. If anything happens, nothing's going to happen. If anything happens, he repeated, you take the boys and you go to Martha Caldwell's. You hear me? Don't try to be brave. Just go. Caleb. He kissed her. It was hard and desperate and over too fast. When he pulled back, his eyes were burning. I'll come back, he said. I promise. Then he was gone, the door slamming behind him, and Eliza stood in the kitchen with her heart pounding and the taste of him still on her lips. The first night was quiet. Eliza kept the boys close, played cards with them until Ben's eyes drooped, told stories until Sam forgot to be suspicious and actually laughed. She tucked them in together in the same bed, ignoring Sam's protests that he was too old for that. Just for tonight, she said. Keep your brother warm. Sam grumbled, but pulled Ben close anyway. Eliza didn't sleep. She sat by the fire with Caleb's rifle across her knees, listening to the wind and the creak of the house and the distant howl of wolves somewhere out in the darkness. She thought about the kiss. She thought about what it meant. She thought about what would happen if Caleb didn't come back. The second night they came. Eliza heard the horses' first hoofbeats, multiple, coming fast up the road. She was on her feet before she knew she was moving, rifle in hand, heart in her throat. Sam, she hissed. Wake up. Get your brother. Go to the root cellar and don't come out until I say. Sam appeared in the doorway, his face pale, but his jaw set. I ain't hiding. Yes, you are. You're protecting Ben. But, Sam Morrison, you do as I say. Now. Something in her voice must have convinced him. He grabbed Ben, still half asleep, and disappeared toward the back of the house. Eliza moved to the window. 3 riders. She could see them in the moonlight, just shapes against the snow. They stopped at the edge of the yard, and one of them dismounted. The knock when it came was almost polite. Eliza opened the door with the rifle raised. Evening, Miss Mercer. Prudence Hawkins's husband stood on the porch, his smile wide and cold. Behind him, 2 men she didn't recognize sat on their horses watching. Mr. Hawkins, it's late for a social call. This ain't social. He pushed past her into the house, his boots tracking snow across the clean floor. Where's Morrison? Not here. I can see that. Where? Eliza kept the rifle steady. That's not your business. Hawkins turned to face her. He was a big man, soft around the middle, but with hard eyes. The kind of man who'd never been told no in his life. Everything on this ranch is my business, Miss Mercer. I hold the mortgage. That makes me, in a manner of speaking, the real owner. The payment isn't due yet. No, it ain't. But I got a right to inspect my collateral. Make sure Morrison ain't running down the property. He smiled again. Or selling off cattle he don't have the right to sell. Eliza's blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? 20 head went missing 2 nights ago. Morrison's out chasing them right now, I imagine. But here's the thing, Miss Mercer. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell whiskey on his breath. Them cattle were supposed to be part of an army contract. A contract Morrison applied for without disclosing his outstanding debts. That's fraud. That's a lie. Is it I got papers that say different? Papers that say Morrison's been misrepresenting his assets, hiding his debts, trying to cheat the United States government out of good money. Hawkins shrugged. Now I'm a reasonable man. I don't want to see a good family destroyed over a misunderstanding. So here's what's going to happen. He pulled a document from his coat and laid it on the table. Morrison signs this, transfers the ranch to me, and I'll make all his problems go away. No fraud charges, no prison. He can take his boys and his mail-order bride and start fresh somewhere else. Eliza stared at the paper. Her hands were shaking, but she kept the rifle steady. Get out of my house. It ain't your house, Miss Mercer. It ain't even Morrison's house, not really. It belongs to the bank, to me. He tapped the paper. I'll give you 3 days. When Morrison gets back, you make him understand. This is the only offer he's gonna get. He tipped his hat, a mockery of courtesy, and walked out into the night. Eliza stood there for a long time after the hoofbeats faded, staring at the paper on the table, the rifle growing heavy in her arms. Sam appeared in the doorway. Miss Eliza! It's all right. They're gone. What did they want? She looked at him, this boy who'd already lost so much, who was trying so hard to be a man, and she couldn't lie to him. They want to take the ranch. Sam's face went white. They can't. They're trying. Pa won't let them. No, he won't. Eliza set the rifle down and crossed to where Sam stood. She put her hands on his shoulders, felt them trembling beneath her palms. And neither will I. Caleb came back on the 3rd day, just as the sun was setting. Eliza heard the horse and ran out to meet him, not caring about the cold, not caring about anything except the fact that he was alive, he was here, he was home. He swung down from the saddle and caught her in his arms. I found them, he said against her hair. All 20. Drove them into a canyon about 10 miles north. Took me 2 days to round them up. You got them back. Every last one. He pulled back, looking at her face. What's wrong? She told him everything. Hawkins, the visit, the papers, the threats. Caleb's face went from relief to rage to something cold and hard. Where are the papers? On the table. He brushed past her into the house. She followed, found him standing over the document, his hands flat on the wood, like he was holding himself back from violence. Fraud, he said quietly. He's accusing me of fraud. Is there any truth to it? Caleb looked up at her, and the hurt in his eyes cut her to the bone. You think I'm a cheat? I think I don't know everything about your situation. I think there might be things you haven't told me. She forced herself to hold his gaze. Are there... The silence stretched between them. Then Caleb sighed, the anger draining out of him like water from a cracked bucket. I didn't disclose my debts on the army application, he said. I didn't lie about them either. They didn't ask. But if Hawkins has gotten to someone, paid someone to look closer to make trouble... He shook his head. It could look bad. Real bad. What do we do? I don't know. He sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 35 years. I thought if I could just get the contract, everything would be all right. But Hawkins has been planning this for years. He's got lawyers' connections money. I got nothing but a failing ranch and a prayer. You've got me. Caleb looked up at her. You've got me, she repeated. And Sam and Ben. And whatever fight is left in all of us. She crouched down beside his chair, took his hands in hers. We don't give up, Caleb. Not now. Not when we're this close. Eliza, I don't know how to win this. Then we figure it out together. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into his lap and held her like she was the only solid thing in a world that was crumbling around him. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Stop saying that. It's true. Then become the man who does. The inspection was scheduled for the next morning. Eliza barely slept. She was up before dawn baking biscuits, making coffee, trying to make the house look like a place the army would want to do business with. Sam helped without being asked. Even Ben pitched in, polishing boots with his good hand until they shone. Caleb rode out early to check the herd one last time. When he came back, his face was grim. They're gone, he said. Eliza's heart stopped. The cattle. The inspectors. I rode to town to meet them at the station. They never came. What do you mean they never came? The stagecoach came through, but there was no army man on it. Nobody knows anything. He threw his hat across the room. Hawkins. It has to be Hawkins. He's done something. What could he do? I don't know. Pay them off? Delay them. Send word that the contract's been canceled. Caleb's voice was rising. He's got his fingers in everything, Eliza. Everything. Pa. Ben appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide. Why are you yelling? Caleb closed his eyes, took a breath. I'm sorry, son. I didn't mean to scare you. Is something wrong? Eliza moved to Ben's side, putting a hand on his shoulder. Your pa's just tired. Why don't you go help Sam in the barn? Ben looked between them, clearly unconvinced, but he went. When the door closed behind him, Caleb turned to Eliza. I have to go to town, find out what happened. I'm coming with you. Eliza, I'm coming with you. The boys can stay with Martha for a few hours. She was already reaching for her coat. If Hawkins is behind this, we need to know. And if there's a way to fix it, we find it together. He didn't argue. They dropped the boys at Martha Caldwell's house, ignoring her questions, promising to explain later. Then they rode into town, pushing the horses hard, reaching the main street just as the morning crowd was starting to gather. The bank was open. Caleb headed straight for it, Eliza at his side. The door banged open, and Hawkins looked up from his desk with a smile that made Eliza want to hit him. Morrison, I've been expecting you. Where are the inspectors? What inspectors? Caleb crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed Hawkins by the collar, hauling him up out of his chair. Don't play games with me. What did you do? Caleb. Eliza grabbed his arm. Not here. Not like this. People were gathering in the doorway, watching. This was exactly what Hawkins wanted, Caleb looking violent, unhinged, dangerous. Caleb's jaw worked, but he released Hawkins, stepped back. I sent a telegram, Hawkins said calmly, smoothing his collar, to Fort Bridger, explaining that one of the applicants for the beef contract had serious financial irregularities. Suggested they might want to postpone the inspection until those irregularities were resolved. You had no right. I have every right. I'm protecting the government from fraud. Hawkins smiled again. And protecting myself from a debtor who's trying to sneak out from under his obligations. I'm not trying to sneak anywhere. I'm trying to pay you. With what stolen cattle? They ain't stolen. They're mine. Are they? Hawkins pulled a paper from his desk. I've got a report here from a reliable source saying those 20 head you just brought back were rustled from the Johnson Ranch 2 counties over. Different brands, but that's easy enough to change, isn't it? Eliza felt sick. That's a lie. Is it? We'll let the sheriff decide. Hawkins nodded toward the door. I believe he's on his way now. Eliza turned. Through the window she could see Sheriff Dalton crossing the street, his face grim. Caleb Morrison, the sheriff said as he came through the door. I need you to come with me. On what charge? Cattle rustling. I got a complaint filed this morning. He glanced at Hawkins, then away. I'm sorry, Caleb. I got to follow the law. This is insane. Those are my cattle. I can prove it. Then prove it. But until you do, I got to hold you. Caleb looked at Eliza. In his eyes, she saw something she'd never seen before. Defeat. "Take care of the boys," he said quietly. "Caleb, no. Take care of them, please." The sheriff took his arm, and Caleb let himself be led out into the street. Eliza watched through the window as they walked toward the jail, watched until they disappeared around the corner. Hawkins was still smiling. 3 days, Miss Mercer. That's how long I can hold him before a judge has to get involved. If you want to make this easy, bring me those papers signed." "Go to hell." She walked out with her head high and her heart breaking. Martha Caldwell took one look at her face and pulled her inside. "Tell me everything." So Eliza did. All of it. The cattle, the inspection, Hawkins's threats, Caleb's arrest. When she finished, she was shaking so hard she could barely hold the cup of tea Martha pressed into her hands. "That man is poison," Martha said grimly. "Has been for years, but nobody's ever been able to touch him. There has to be something we can do. Against Hawkins, against his lawyers, his money, his connections." Martha shook her head. "I wish I could tell you different, honey, but this is his town, has been since he bought the bank 10 years ago. So we just give up? Let him take everything?" "I didn't say that." Eliza looked up. Martha's eyes were thoughtful. "Hawkins has power because people are afraid of him, but fear only works as long as people stay quiet." She leaned forward. "What if they didn't?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if someone stood up and told the truth about the land, grabs the manipulated loans, the families he's destroyed? There's plenty of us who know what he's done. We just never had the courage to say it out loud." "Would anyone listen?" "To me, to the other women in this town." Martha smiled, but there was steel in it. "Honey, we've been listening to each other for years. It's about time someone listened to us." That evening, Martha Caldwell called a meeting. Not the polite tea gatherings Eliza had attended before. This was something different. Women from all over the county crowded into Martha's parlor, their faces serious, their voices low. Eliza stood before them and told her story. When she finished, there was silence. Then one by one other women began to speak. Sarah Johnson, whose husband had lost their farm 3 years ago when Hawkins called in a loan early. Mary Peters, whose brother had been driven out of town after refusing to sell his land. Ruth Blackwood, whose father had died in debt because Hawkins had manipulated the interest rates. Story after story after story. Years of injustice, years of silence, all of it pouring out in Martha Caldwell's parlor, while the fire crackled and the snow fell outside. "We've been afraid for too long," Martha said when the last story was told. "We've let that man run roughshod over this town because we thought there was nothing we could do. But there's always something. There's always us." "What can we do?" someone asked. "He owns the bank. He owns half the businesses in town. He's got the sheriff in his pocket." "The sheriff answers to the law," Martha said. "And the law comes from the territorial government. If enough of us write letters, sign petitions, make noise, that could take months. Then we need something faster." Eliza spoke up, her voice stronger than she felt. "Hawkins accused Caleb of rustling cattle from the Johnson Ranch. If we can prove those cattle were always Morrison cattle, the charges fall apart. How do we prove that? Records, brand registrations, bills of sale." Eliza's mind was racing. Every rancher keeps records. If we can gather enough documentation to show Caleb's herd has always been legitimate. "I can help with that," a new voice said. Everyone turned. In the doorway stood Sam Morrison, his face pale but determined. "Sam," Eliza started. "You should be... I know where Pa keeps his records. All of them. Going back to Grandpa's time." He stepped into the room, squaring his shoulders. "If you need proof, I can find it." The room went quiet. Then Martha Caldwell smiled. "Well," she said, "I think we have ourselves a plan." They worked through the night. Sam led them to a locked chest in Caleb's bedroom, a chest Eliza had never noticed before. Inside were years of records, brand registrations, cattle counts, bills of sale, everything a rancher needed to prove his herd was legitimate. They sorted through papers until their eyes burned. Martha's husband, a quiet man who'd said little all evening, rode to 3 neighboring ranches to gather corroborating documents. By dawn, they had a stack of evidence a foot high. "This is enough," Martha said, looking at the pile. "More than enough. No honest judge could look at this and call Caleb Morrison a rustler." "Hawkins will try to stop us," Eliza said. "He'll lie, bribe, threaten. Let him try." Martha's smile was fierce. "He's spent years making enemies in this town. Now those enemies are going to speak." The courthouse was packed. Word had spread overnight. Half the county had turned out to watch as Eliza Mercer, a mail-order bride who'd been in Wyoming less than 2 months, stood before Judge Harrison with a stack of papers and the truth. Hawkins was there, flanked by lawyers, his face thunderous. Caleb was there too, brought from the jail in handcuffs, his eyes finding Eliza's across the room. She nodded at him. "I've got this." He nodded back. "I know." "Your Honor," Eliza began, "I'm here to present evidence that the charges against Caleb Morrison are false, fabricated by a man with a personal vendetta and a history of predatory lending practices in this community." Objection. One of Hawkins's lawyers was on his feet. "This woman has no standing. She has standing as a witness," Judge Harrison said mildly. "Continue, Miss Mercer." Eliza laid out the evidence. The brand registrations, the bills of sale, the records going back 3 generations. And then, one by one, the women of the town stood to tell their stories. Sarah Johnson, Mary Peters, Ruth Blackwood, a dozen others, each with their own account of Hawkins' manipulation, intimidation, fraud. By the time the last woman sat down, the courtroom was silent. Judge Harrison looked at Hawkins. "Mr. Hawkins, do you have anything to say?" Hawkins's face was red, his hands clenched. "This is a conspiracy. These women have been coached." "These women are citizens of this territory," the judge cut in. "And their testimony is consistent with patterns I've seen in other cases from this county. Cases I perhaps should have looked at more closely." He turned to Caleb. "Mr. Morrison, based on the evidence presented, I find no grounds for the charges against you. You're free to go." He paused. "And Mr. Hawkins, I'll be launching an investigation into your banking practices. I suggest you find yourself a good lawyer." The gavel came down. Eliza didn't remember crossing the room. One moment she was standing at the front of the courthouse, the next she was in Caleb's arms, his handcuffs gone, his face buried in her hair. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved everything." "We did it. All of us." She pulled back to look at him, at this man she'd come 1,000 miles to marry, this man she'd fought for without knowing she could. "I love you," she said. The words came out before she could stop them, before she could think about whether it was the right time or the right place. Caleb stared at her. Then his face broke into the widest smile she'd ever seen. "Well, it's about damn time," he said, and kissed her right there in front of the whole county. The ride home from the courthouse felt like a dream. Caleb kept one arm around Eliza the whole way, like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go. Sam drove the wagon, his shoulders straighter than she'd ever seen them. Ben bounced on the seat between them, chattering about the trial, about how Miss Eliza had been so brave, about how the judge's face had gone all red when Mrs. Caldwell stood up to testify. "And then Pa kissed you," Ben crowed. "Right in front of everybody. Sam said it was embarrassing, but I think it was romantic." "It was both," Sam said, but he was almost smiling. Eliza leaned into Caleb's warmth. "What happens now?" "Now we wait. The investigation into Hawkins could take months. And the Army contract?" He shook his head. "I don't know. After everything that happened, they might not want to do business with me." "They'd be fools not to." "Maybe. But the government's full of fools." When they reached the ranch, Martha Caldwell's wagon was already there. She'd ridden ahead with her husband, and now she stood on the porch with a basket in her hands and tears in her eyes. "You did good today," she said, pulling Eliza into a fierce hug. "You did real good. I couldn't have done it without you. That's how it works, honey. None of us can do much alone, but together. Martha smiled through her tears. Together, we're stronger than any man with a bank account. That night, after the boys were in bed and Martha had gone home, Caleb and Eliza sat on the porch in the cold. The stars were out scattered across the sky like spilled sugar. "I meant what I said," Eliza said quietly. "In the courthouse." "I know. You haven't said it back." Caleb was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I loved Margaret. Loved her from the time I was 16 years old. When she died, I thought that part of me died too. I didn't think I could feel that way again." He turned to look at her. "But then you stepped off that stagecoach and everything changed." "Caleb, let me finish." He took her hands. "I've been scared to say it. Scared that if I admitted how I felt, something would take you away from me too. Like the universe would punish me for daring to be happy again. Nothing's going to take me away. You don't know that. I know I'm not leaving. Isn't that enough?" He raised her hands to his lips, kissed her knuckles one by one. "I love you, Eliza Mercer. I love you so much it terrifies me." She leaned in and kissed him soft and slow. "Good," she whispered against his mouth. "Now we can be terrified together." The army inspector arrived 3 days later. Eliza was in the kitchen when she heard the horse. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to the window, her heart hammering. A man in uniform was dismounting by the corral, his face hidden under the brim of his hat. Caleb came out of the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. She watched them shake hands, watched Caleb gesture toward the pastures, watched the inspector nod. She couldn't hear what they were saying. The inspection took 4 hours. 4 hours of waiting, of trying to keep busy, of jumping every time she heard footsteps on the porch. Ben sensed her anxiety and stayed close, helping with chores without being asked. "Is Pa going to be all right?" he asked. "I hope so, sweetheart." "What if the army man says no?" "Then we'll figure out something else." "Promise." She pulled him close. "I promise." When Caleb finally came through the door, his face was unreadable. The inspector was behind him, his uniform dusty, his expression giving nothing away. "Miss Mercer," the inspector said, tipping his hat. "I've heard a lot about you. Good things, I hope." "Interesting things." He glanced at Caleb. "Your fiancé tells me you organized half the county to testify against a corrupt banker." "I had help. Nevertheless, it takes courage to stand up to men like that." He paused. "It takes the same kind of courage to run a ranch this size with limited resources." Eliza's breath caught. "Does that mean—" "It means I've made my decision." The inspector turned to Caleb. "Mr. Morrison, the United States Army would be proud to do business with you. The contract is yours." Caleb's knees actually buckled. Eliza caught him, steadied him, and he pulled her into an embrace so tight she could barely breathe. "We did it," he said into her hair. "We actually did it. I told you we would. I didn't believe you. I know, that's why I had to prove it." The inspector cleared his throat. "I'll need you to sign some papers, Mr. Morrison, and Miss Mercer." He smiled. "If you ever get tired of ranching, the Army could use someone with your organizational skills." Eliza laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. "I think I'll stay where I am, but thank you." The news spread through town like wildfire. Within a week, everyone in the county knew that Caleb Morrison had won the Army contract, that Hawkins was under investigation, that the mail-order bride from Philadelphia had turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to the Morrison family. Eliza found herself stopped on the street when she went to town. Women who had looked down their noses at her before now wanted to shake her hand, hear her story, ask her advice. Men who had dismissed her as a city girl out of her depth now tipped their hats and called her ma'am. It was strange, and a little overwhelming. "They don't know what to make of you," Martha said one afternoon over tea. "A woman who fought back and won. It's not something they're used to seeing." I didn't do it alone. You keep saying that, but you're the one who stood up in that courthouse. You're the one who didn't back down. I had something worth fighting for. Martha smiled. That's what makes the difference, isn't it? Finding something worth the fight. 3 weeks after the trial, Caleb asked her to marry him properly. Not the practical arrangement they'd discussed in letters. Not a business deal or a convenience. A real proposal with a real ring, his mother's ring, a simple gold band that had been in the Morrison family for 3 generations. He asked her on the porch at sunset with the boys watching from the window and pretending they weren't. I know this ain't how you probably imagined it, he said down on one knee in the cold. I ain't got pretty words or fancy promises, but I can promise you this, I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of you. I will love you and protect you and stand beside you through whatever comes. And if you'll have me, yes. I wasn't finished. I don't care. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. From inside the house came a whoop of joy, Ben unable to contain himself any longer, and then the door burst open, and both boys tumbled out onto the porch. Does this mean you're staying forever? Ben demanded. Yes, Ben. Forever. And you'll be our ma. Eliza looked at Sam, who was hanging back, his face uncertain. Only if you want me to be, she said. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he stepped forward. I want you to be, he said quietly. I've wanted it for a while. I was scared. Of what? Of loving someone and losing them again. Eliza's heart cracked open. She pulled Sam into a hug, and after a moment of stiffness, he hugged her back. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. I promise you, Sam, I'm not going anywhere. The wedding was planned for Christmas Eve. It seemed fitting a new beginning, as the old year died a celebration of light in the darkest part of winter. Martha Caldwell took charge of the arrangements, and Eliza was grateful to let her. There was enough to do at the ranch, enough to worry about, enough to keep her hands and mind busy. The Army contract meant money coming in, but it also meant work. Caleb and Sam spent long days preparing the cattle for delivery, counting heads, checking brands, making sure everything was in order. Eliza kept the house running, kept Ben occupied, kept herself from worrying every time Caleb rode out and didn't come back until after dark. You're going to wear a hole in the floor, Martha observed one afternoon watching Eliza pace. I can't help it. What if something goes wrong? Something always goes wrong. That's life. But you've already proven you can handle it. What if I can't? Then you'll figure it out. That's what you do, Eliza Morrison. Eliza stopped pacing. I'm not Eliza Morrison yet. You've been Eliza Morrison from the moment you stepped off that stagecoach. The wedding's just making it official. A week before the wedding, the letter arrived. Eliza saw Caleb's face when he opened it, saw the color drain away, saw his hands start to shake. What is it? He didn't answer, just handed her the letter. It was from Philadelphia. From a lawyer she'd never heard of, writing on behalf of a man she'd hoped never to hear from again. Her brother-in-law, William's brother. The man who'd tried to claim everything William owned when he died, who'd threatened her with lawyers and debts and accusations until she'd fled the city with nothing but a carpetbag and a broken heart. He was coming to Wyoming. He'd heard about the ranch, about the Army contract, about the marriage. And he was claiming that Eliza owed him money, a debt from William's estate that she'd never known existed. This is a lie, she said, her voice shaking. William didn't owe him anything. He made that up to steal what was mine. Can you prove it? I don't know. I left everything behind when I came here. Papers, records, I just wanted to get away. Caleb's jaw tightened. When's he arriving? Eliza looked at the letter again. Her stomach dropped. 3 days. The man who stepped off the stagecoach 3 days later was exactly as Eliza remembered him. Edward Mercer was tall and thin, with a face like a hatchet, and eyes that never quite met yours. He'd been jealous of William. She knew, jealous of his happiness, his success, his wife. When William died, Edward had descended like a vulture picking at the remains of a life he'd always coveted. "Sister," he said, and the word dripped with false warmth. "How wonderful to see you. What do you want, Edward?" "Straight to business. I always admired that about you." He glanced around the town square at the people watching. "Is there somewhere more private we can talk?" "No. Say what you came to say." Edward's smile tightened. "Very well. William owed me money. $300 to be precise. A loan I made him before he died secured against his assets. When he passed, those assets became yours, which means the debt is yours as well." "There was no loan. You're lying." "I have documents." "Forged documents." "That's a serious accusation, sister." "I'm not your sister." Eliza's voice was steady, even though her heart was pounding. "I was your brother's wife. There's a difference." Edward's eyes flickered. "Be that as it may, I have a legal claim. Pay me what you owe, or I'll take you to court." "Then take me to court." "I will. And I'll win. And when I do everything you've built here, your little ranch, your army contract, your frontier family, it'll all be mine." He tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy and walked away. Eliza stood there in the street frozen until Caleb's hand closed over hers. "We'll fight this," he said. "With what? We just survived one legal battle. The money from the contract isn't coming until spring. If he takes us to court, we'll figure it out." How do we fight someone with money and lawyers and the same way we fought Hawkins? Caleb turned her to face him. "Together. With the truth. With people who believe in us. What if it's not enough? Then we go down swinging. But we don't give up. Not now. Not ever." Eliza wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe. But Edward Mercer had ruined her once before, and she wasn't sure she could survive him doing it again. The days before the wedding became a blur of anxiety and preparation. Martha Caldwell researched property law. Sam and Ben went through every document in the house, looking for anything that might help. Caleb rode to neighboring ranches, gathering support, calling in favors. And Eliza wrote letters. To everyone she could think of in Philadelphia. Old neighbors, former employers, anyone who might remember William, remember their life together, remember the truth of their finances. "What if no one responds?" she asked Caleb one night, her hand cramping from hours of writing. "Then we find another way." "What other way?" "I don't know yet, but there's always another way." She wanted to believe him. She tried so hard to believe. The night before the wedding, Eliza couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire in the main room, wrapped in a quilt, staring at the flames. Tomorrow was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. And all she could think about was Edward Mercer, circling like a vulture, waiting to tear apart everything she'd built. "Can't sleep either." She turned. Sam was standing in the doorway. His hair mussed his feet bare. "You should be in bed," she said. "So should you." He came and sat beside her on the floor, pulling his knees to his chest. "Are you scared?" "About the wedding. About everything." Eliza considered lying, but Sam deserved better than that. "Yes," she admitted. "I'm scared." "Me too." He was quiet for a moment. "That man from Philadelphia. He's bad, isn't he?" "Yes." "Will he take you away from us?" "No." The word came out fierce certain. "No, Sam. I'm not going anywhere. No matter what happens with Edward, no matter what he does, I'm staying right here." "Promise?" "I promise." Sam leaned against her side and she put her arm around him. They sat there together, watching the fire burn low, not talking, just being. "Miss Eliza," Sam said finally. "Yes. I'm glad you came. I didn't want to be at first, but I am now." Eliza's eyes burned with tears. "I'm glad I came too, Sam." Christmas Eve dawned cold and clear. Eliza dressed in her best dress, the blue one she'd been saving, the one that had belonged to her mother. Martha helped with her hair, twisting it up and pinning it with a comb that had tiny seed pearls on it. "Something borrowed," Martha said. "It's beautiful." "Not as beautiful as you." Martha stepped back, her eyes misty. "Caleb Morrison is a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one." "You're both lucky. That's how it should be." The church was packed. Half the county had turned out, crowded into pews and standing along the walls. When Eliza walked through the doors on Martha's husband's arm, a hush fell over the room. Caleb was at the altar, his face freshly shaved, his hair combed, wearing a suit she'd never seen before. He looked terrified. She smiled at him, and he smiled back, and suddenly, she wasn't scared anymore. Ben stood beside his father, holding the ring with the gravity of someone entrusted with a sacred duty. Sam stood next to him, his shoulders straight, his eyes bright. Her boys, her family. The minister spoke, but Eliza barely heard the words. She was too busy looking at Caleb, at the love in his eyes, at the future they were building together. "Do you, Caleb Morrison, take this woman?" The church doors banged open. Everyone turned. Edward Mercer stood in the doorway, his face flushed with triumph. "I object," he said loudly. "This marriage cannot proceed." Caleb stepped forward, his jaw tight. "This is a house of God, Mercer. You have no right. I have every right. That woman is not free to marry. She's indebted to me, and until she pays, she's legally bound." The congregation erupted in murmurs. Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. Then, from the back of the church, another voice spoke. "That's a lie." A woman pushed through the crowd. She was middle-aged, gray-haired, wearing traveling clothes covered in dust. Eliza's heart stopped. "Mrs. Patterson," she whispered. Helen Patterson had been Eliza's neighbor in Philadelphia, the woman who'd brought soup when William was sick, the woman who'd held Eliza while she cried at the funeral, the woman who'd warned her about Edward's scheming. "I got your letter," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice ringing through the church. "And I brought something with me." She held up a sheaf of papers. William Mercer's will. His real will, not the forgery Edward filed after his death. And with it, testimony from William's lawyer, from his banker, from 3 witnesses who can swear that Edward Mercer never made any loan to his brother. Edward's face went white. "Those documents are false. These documents are sworn and notarized, unlike yours." Mrs. Patterson turned to the minister. "I apologize for the interruption, Reverend. Please continue the ceremony." Edward lunged forward, but 2 men from the congregation grabbed him before he could take 3 steps. "Get him out of here," someone called. "Take him to the sheriff. Let the good folks have their wedding." As Edward was dragged from the church, still shouting protests, Eliza turned to Mrs. Patterson. "How did you—" "I never believed his lies, dear. None of us did. But we didn't have proof until you wrote and asked us to look." The older woman smiled. "Some battles you can fight alone. This wasn't one of them." Eliza pulled her into a hug, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." When she turned back to the altar, Caleb was waiting, his eyes bright with emotion. "You ready?" he asked. "I've been ready since the day I stepped off that stagecoach." The minister cleared his throat, looking flustered but determined. "Shall we try this again?" Laughter rippled through the church. Eliza nodded. This time no one interrupted. "Do you, Caleb Morrison, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do. Lord help me, I do." "And do you, Eliza Mercer, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The minister smiled. "You may kiss your bride." Caleb pulled her close and kissed her, and the church erupted in cheers. When they finally broke apart, Ben was tugging at her skirt. "Does this mean I can call you Ma now?" Eliza crouched down, her wedding dress pooling around her. "Yes, Ben. You can call me Ma." He threw his arms around her neck. "I love you, Ma." "I love you too, sweetheart." Sam stepped forward, his face working with emotion he was trying hard to control. "Me too," he said quietly. "I love you too." Eliza pulled him into the hug, and then Caleb was there wrapping his arms around all of them. They stood there in front of the altar, a family finally complete, while the congregation applauded and the church bells rang and the winter sun streamed through the windows. And Eliza Morrison no longer. Mercer, no longer alone, finally understood what it meant to come home. The reception was held at Martha Caldwell's house. The whole town came, it seemed. There was food and music and dancing children running underfoot, old men telling stories by the fire. Eliza moved through it all in a daze of happiness, accepting congratulations, answering questions, laughing at jokes she barely heard. Caleb stayed close, his hand on her back, her waist, her shoulder. Like he couldn't stop touching her, couldn't quite believe she was real. "Happy," he murmured in her ear. Deliriously. "Good, because I plan to keep you that way for the rest of your life." Late in the evening, when the party was finally winding down, Martha pulled Eliza aside. "I have something for you," she said. "A wedding gift." She pressed a small leather pouch into Eliza's hands. When Eliza opened it, she found coins, gold coins. "Martha, I can't." "You can and you will. It's from all of us. Every woman who testified against Hawkins, every family you helped save." Martha's eyes were fierce with pride. "You gave us our courage back, Eliza. This is just a small way of saying thank you." Eliza counted the coins. Her eyes widened. "This is enough to pay off the last of Caleb's debts to the bank, plus a little extra for whatever comes next." Eliza couldn't speak, couldn't find words big enough for what she felt. She just hugged Martha hard and let the tears fall. They rode home under the stars, all four of them squished together in the wagon. Ben fell asleep against Eliza's shoulder. Sam drove the horses, humming a tune under his breath. Caleb had his arm around her, and she leaned into his warmth. "Quite a day," he said. "Quite a life." He kissed the top of her head. "No regrets. Not a single one. Not even when Edward Mercer burst through those church doors." Eliza laughed. "Maybe a small one for about 30 seconds. That's fair." They rode in comfortable silence. The ranch came into view dark against the snow, but when they pulled up to the house, there were candles in the windows. Someone had been here while they were gone, making sure they'd come home to light and warmth. "Martha," Eliza guessed. "Probably. That woman thinks of everything." They carried the sleeping boys inside, tucked them into their beds, stood together in the doorway, watching them breathe. "Our sons," Caleb said softly. "Our sons." He took her hand and led her to their room. Their room now, the one they would share for the rest of their lives. "I know it ain't much," he started. "It's everything. It's more than I ever dreamed." He pulled her close, and she went willingly, wrapping her arms around him, breathing in the scent of him, leather and wood smoke, and something that was just Caleb. "I love you, Eliza Morrison." "I love you too, Caleb Morrison." Outside, the wind whispered across the Wyoming plains, and the stars wheeled overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled at the moon. But inside the little house on the Double M Ranch, there was only warmth and love, and the quiet breathing of a family finally whole. The first morning of their married life, Eliza woke to the sound of laughter. She lay still for a moment, disoriented. The bed was different. The room was different. And there was warmth beside her, Caleb still sleeping, his face peaceful in a way she'd never seen before. The laughter came again. Ben's voice high and delighted, followed by Sam's lower rumble. Eliza slipped out of bed, carefully wrapped herself in a shawl, and padded to the kitchen. Both boys were at the table. Ben was covered in flour, his face split in a grin. Sam stood at the stove, looking more flustered than she'd ever seen him. "What on earth are you two doing?" "Making breakfast," Ben announced. "For you and Pa. Because it's your first morning as a real family. Sam's face went red. The biscuits ain't turning out right. I followed Ma's recipe, but... Eliza crossed to him, looked at the lumpy dough in the pan. You forgot the baking powder, she said gently. I did. It's all right. We'll start over. She put her hand on his shoulder. Thank you for trying, Sam. It means more than you know. He ducked his head, embarrassed, but pleased. I wanted it to be special. It already is. Caleb appeared in the doorway, his hair mussed, his eyes soft with sleep. What's all this? Your sons are making us breakfast, Eliza said. Are they now? He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. Should I be worried? Probably. Ben threw a handful of flour at them both. Hey. Caleb released Eliza and lunged for his son. Ben shrieked and ran, and suddenly the kitchen was chaos, flour flying, boys laughing. Caleb chasing them both around the table, while Eliza stood in the middle of it all, covered in white powder, laughing until tears streamed down her face. This, she thought. This is what I came for. The week after Christmas was quiet. The snow fell steadily, blanketing the ranch in white, keeping them close to home. Eliza used the time to organize, to clean, to settle into her new life. She moved her few belongings into Caleb's room, their room now. She rearranged the kitchen to suit her preferences. She hung the quilt her mother had made over the back of the chair by the fire. You're nesting, Caleb observed one evening. Is that a problem? No, ma'am. He pulled her onto his lap. It's the best thing I've ever seen. The boys adjusted to the new normal with the resilience of children. Ben started calling her Ma without hesitation, the word rolling off his tongue like he'd been waiting his whole life to say it. Sam was more cautious, testing the word out in private moments when he thought no one was listening. Eliza heard him, though, and every time her heart grew a little bigger. New Year's Eve. They gathered around the fire, all four of them, and talked about the year to come. I want to learn to ride better, Ben said, and read a whole book by myself, and maybe get a dog. A dog? Caleb raised an eyebrow. Who's going to take care of a dog? Me. I'll do everything I promise. We'll see. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I want to help more. With the ranch. With the business. I'm old enough, Pa. Caleb studied his son's face. You're 10 years old. Almost 11. And I've been doing a man's work for 2 years now. I know you have. Caleb's voice was rough. And I've asked too much of you. You're still a boy, Sam. You deserve to be a boy. I don't want to be a boy. I want to help. Eliza reached over and took Sam's hand. You can do both. Help and still be young. They're not mutually exclusive. Sam looked at her, uncertain. What do you want? For the new year. She thought about it. About all the dreams she'd had before William died, all the hopes that had shriveled when she found herself alone. About the new dreams that had taken root since she'd stepped off that stagecoach into the Wyoming cold. I want us to be happy, she said simply. All of us. Together. Caleb's hand found hers in the firelight. That's what I want too, he said. The first week of January brought the Army delivery. Caleb had been preparing for weeks, cutting out the best cattle, organizing them into a drive-ready herd. The contract called for 100 head delivered to Fort Bridger by the 15th. It was a 2-day drive in good weather, longer if the snow was bad. I wish I could come with you, Eliza said the morning he was set to leave. I wish you could too, but the boys need you here. The boys need their father. And they'll have him. I'll be back in 5 days, maybe 6. He cupped her face in his hands. Don't burn down the house while I'm gone. I make no promises. He kissed her long and deep. I love you, Eliza Morrison. I love you too. Now go before I change my mind and tie you to the porch. Sam was going with him, his first real cattle drive. The boy sat tall in the saddle, trying to look older than his years, but Eliza saw the excitement underneath the studied calm. Take care of your father, she told him. "I will. And take care of yourself." "Yes, ma'am." She watched them ride out with the herd, Caleb in front, Sam at his side, the cattle moving slow and steady across the snow. She watched until they disappeared over the horizon, until there was nothing left but white. Then she went back inside to find Ben waiting. "It's just us now," he said. "Just us." "What do we do?" Eliza smiled. "Whatever we want." The first 2 days were easy. Eliza and Ben fell into a routine chores in the morning, reading lessons in the afternoon, stories by the fire at night. Ben was making progress, sounding out words with growing confidence. He was smart, she realized. Smarter than anyone had given him credit for. "Sam says I'm slow," he confided one evening. "Sam's wrong. He says I should have learned to read by now." "Everyone learns at their own pace. There's nothing slow about you, Ben Morrison." He beamed at her. "You really think so?" "I know so." The third day the storm hit. Eliza had seen Wyoming storms before, but nothing like this. The wind howled like a living thing, rattling the windows, finding every crack in the walls. The temperature dropped so fast she could feel it through the logs. She piled blankets on Ben's bed, built up the fire as high as she dared, brought the chickens into the barn, and prayed the horses would survive the night in the corral. "Is Pa going to be all right?" Ben asked, his face pale with fear. "Your Pa knows these plains better than anyone. He'll find shelter." "What if he can't?" "Then he'll make shelter. He's done it before." "How do you know?" Eliza pulled Ben close. "Because he promised he'd come back. And your Pa doesn't break his promises." The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of howling wind and driving snow and temperatures so cold that ice formed on the inside of the windows. Eliza rationed their firewood, rationed their food, kept Ben as warm and calm as she could, while terror clawed at her own heart. Where was Caleb? Where was Sam? Had they made it to the fort? Had they found shelter? Were they alive? She couldn't let herself think about it. Couldn't let the fear take over. Ben was watching her, taking his cues from her. If she panicked, he would panic. So she stayed calm. She told stories. She played games. She pretended everything was fine, even as the wind screamed outside, and her husband was somewhere out there in the white. On the 4th day, the storm broke. Eliza woke to silence. No wind. No snow against the windows. Just silence, heavy and absolute. She eased out of bed, careful not to wake Ben, and went to the window. The world outside was transformed. Snow lay in drifts higher than the porch rails, smoothing out the landscape into gentle waves of white. The sky was clear, pale blue, the sun just coming up over the eastern hills. And there, at the edge of the horizon, a dark shape moving toward the ranch. Eliza's heart stopped. She ran for the door, threw it open, plunged into snow up to her waist. She didn't feel the cold, didn't feel anything except the desperate need to know. The shape resolved itself. 2 horses, 2 riders. Caleb and Sam. Eliza's knees buckled. She would have fallen if she hadn't grabbed the porch rail. Tears streamed down her face, freezing on her cheeks, but she didn't care. They were alive. They were coming home. Caleb reached her first, swinging down from his horse and wading through the snow to catch her in his arms. "I thought," she choked. "I know. He held her tight, his face buried in her hair. "We got caught in the pass. Had to shelter in a line cabin for 3 days. I couldn't get word to you. I was so scared." "Me too." He pulled back, looked at her face. "But I promised I'd come back. Remember." "I remember." Sam came up beside them, his face exhausted, but proud. "We made the delivery," he said. "Every head accounted for. The army man said Pa's cattle were the finest he'd seen all winter." Eliza pulled him into the hug. "I'm so proud of you both." "Can we go inside now?" Sam asked. "I can't feel my feet." Eliza laughed through her tears. Yes, let's go inside." Ben was awake when they came through the door, his eyes huge. Pa Sam. He launched himself at his father, and Caleb caught him, lifted him up, held him close. Hey, little man. Miss me. Miss Eliza said you'd come back. She said you promised. She was right. I did promise. Caleb looked at Eliza over Ben's head. And I always keep my promises. The money from the army contract arrived 2 weeks later. Caleb rode into town to collect it, and when he came back, his face was transformed. Lighter, younger, like years of worry had fallen away. It's done, he said. The bank's paid off. The ranch is ours free and clear. Eliza stared at him. All of it. All of it. Plus enough left over to see us through spring and then some. He pulled her into his arms, spun her around the kitchen. We did it, Eliza. We actually did it. We did it together. Together. He set her down, his hands on her waist. I never could have done this without you. You know that, right? Without you standing up to Hawkins, without you fighting for us, without you believing in me, when I couldn't believe in myself. Stop. She put her fingers over his lips. This isn't about what I did for you. This is about what we built together. You and me and Sam and Ben. A family, a home, a future. You're right. He kissed her fingers. You're always right. Remember that. Yes, ma'am. Spring came early that year. The snow melted in February, revealing green grass underneath. The cattle that had survived the winter began to fatten on new growth. Calves were born healthy and strong. The ranch came alive again. Eliza planted a garden behind the house, vegetables and herbs and flowers, just like her mother used to grow. Ben helped her, his small hands careful with the seeds. Will they really turn into food? He asked. If we take care of them. Like Pa takes care of the cattle. Exactly like that. Sam threw himself into ranch work with renewed energy. He was growing taller, filling out, becoming the young man he'd been so desperate to be. But he also smiled more now, laughed more, let himself be a boy when he wasn't being a rancher. You've changed him, Caleb said one evening, watching Sam and Ben wrestle in the yard. He changed himself. I just gave him permission. Same thing. Not really, but I'll take the credit if you're offering. He pulled her close, and they stood together watching their sons, watching the sun set over the Wyoming hills, watching the future unfold before them. In March, Eliza realized she was pregnant. She didn't tell Caleb right away. Wasn't sure how to tell him, wasn't sure what he would say. Another child meant another mouth to feed, another responsibility, another risk. But it also meant another chance, another life, another piece of the family they were building together. She told him on a Sunday evening after the boys were in bed, sitting together on the porch where they'd had so many important conversations. I have something to tell you. That sounds serious. It is. She took his hand, placed it on her stomach. We're going to have a baby. Caleb went very still. A baby, he repeated. Yes. You're sure? I'm sure. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just sat there, his hand on her stomach, his face unreadable. Then he started to laugh. Caleb. A baby. He was laughing and crying at the same time. We're going to have a baby. Are you happy? Happy? He pulled her into his arms, held her like she was something precious. Eliza, I'm terrified, and amazed, and grateful, and so damn happy I don't know what to do with it. So it's good news. It's the best news I've ever had. He pulled back, looked at her with wonder. How do you keep doing this? Doing what? Making my life better. Every day, every single day, you make everything better. I don't deserve. Stop saying that. But, I mean it. Stop. She took his face in her hands. You deserve every good thing, Caleb Morrison. You deserve happiness and love and a house full of children. You've worked hard. You've fought hard. You've lost and you've kept going. If anyone deserves good things, It's you." He kissed her, deep and long and full of everything they couldn't put into words. "I love you," he said when they finally broke apart. "I love you too. We're going to have a baby." "We are." "Ben's going to lose his mind." Eliza laughed. "Ben's going to be thrilled. Sam's going to pretend he's not thrilled, but secretly be thrilled." "That sounds about right." They sat there on the porch, holding hands in the darkness, while the stars wheeled overhead, and their sons slept inside, and a new life grew in the space between them. The next morning they told the boys. Ben's reaction was exactly what Eliza had predicted. Unbridled joy, 1,000 questions, immediate plans for how he would help with the baby. "Can I hold it? Can I name it? Can I teach it to read?" "Slow down." Caleb laughed. "The baby won't be here for months." "How many months?" "About 6. That's forever." Sam's reaction was more measured, but Eliza saw the light in his eyes. "A brother or sister?" he asked. "We won't know until the baby comes." "But it's really happening." "It's really happening." He nodded slowly. "Good. That's good." Later, when Ben was distracted and Caleb was outside, Sam found Eliza in the kitchen. "Ma?" The word still made her heart skip every time he said it. "Yes, Sam. I'm glad. About the baby. I know I didn't show it much this morning, but—" He struggled with the words. "I'm really glad." "I know you are. It's just—" He looked at his feet. "What if things change? What if you love the new baby more than me and Ben?" Eliza set down her mixing bowl and pulled Sam into her arms. He was almost as tall as she was now, but in that moment he felt small, young, fragile. "Listen to me," she said fiercely. "Love isn't a pie. It doesn't get smaller when you share it. Every child I have I will love with my whole heart. That includes you and Ben. That includes this new baby. My heart will just keep getting bigger. Promise." "I promise. I will always love you, Sam Morrison. Always, no matter what." He hugged her back hard. "Thanks, Ma." Summer brought changes. Eliza grew rounder as the months passed, and the boys took on more responsibilities without being asked. Sam worked alongside his father every day, learning the business of ranching with a seriousness that made Caleb proud. Ben helped Eliza in the garden, in the kitchen, wherever he was needed. The ranch prospered. The herd grew. Caleb took on a hired hand to help with the workload, a young man named Daniel, who'd been drifting through and needed a place to land. "You're building something here," Martha Caldwell observed during one of her visits. "Something real." "We're trying." "You're succeeding." Martha looked around the kitchen at the clean floors and the curtains Eliza had made and the flowers in the window. "This house feels different than it used to. It feels like a home." "It is a home." "It wasn't always. I came here once right after Margaret died. Caleb was barely holding on. The boys were running wild. I thought—" She shook her head. "I thought he might give up, sell out to Hawkins and disappear." "He didn't give up." "No. He held on until you came." Martha took Eliza's hand. "You saved them, you know. All 3 of them." "They saved me too." "That's how it works, isn't it? We save each other." The baby came in September on a night when the stars were so bright they looked like scattered diamonds. Eliza's labor started at sunset. By midnight she was gripping Caleb's hand hard enough to leave bruises, her teeth clenched against the pain. "You're doing great," he kept saying. "You're doing so great." "Easy for you to say," she gasped. "You're not the one." Another contraction cut her off. Martha Caldwell was there, calm and competent, talking Eliza through each wave. Sam and Ben had been sent to a neighbor's house despite their protests. "This ain't for children's eyes," Caleb had told them. "But we want to be there when our brother or sister comes. You will be, just not for the messy part." The baby arrived just before dawn. A girl. Tiny and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and lungs that announced her presence to the world with a furious wail. "She's beautiful," Caleb breathed. Eliza held her daughter against her chest, too exhausted and overwhelmed to speak. This tiny person, this new life she and Caleb had made her. Together. "What's her name?" Martha asked. Eliza looked at Caleb. They'd discussed names for months, going back and forth, never quite settling. "Margaret," Caleb said quietly. "After her grandmother." Tears sprang to Eliza's eyes. "Margaret Rose, after both our mothers." "Margaret Rose Morrison." Caleb's voice cracked. "That's perfect." They brought the boys home that afternoon. Sam came in first, his face carefully neutral, trying to be mature. But when he saw the baby in Eliza's arms, something in him melted. "She's so small," he whispered. "You want to hold her?" "Can I?" Eliza transferred the baby carefully into Sam's arms. He held her like she was made of glass, his face transformed with wonder. "Hey there, little sister," he said softly. "I'm Sam. I'm going to take care of you. I promise." Ben was less restrained. He bounced on his toes, barely containing himself. "Can I see? Can I see?" Sam crouched down so Ben could look. "She's all red and wrinkly," Ben said. "All babies are like that at first," Eliza said. "You were too." "I was not." "You were. I've seen the drawings your ma made." Ben considered this. "Will she get less wrinkly?" "Much less." "Good." He reached out one finger and touched the baby's hand. Margaret's tiny fingers curled around his, holding on. Ben's face transformed. "She's holding my hand. Pa, she's holding my hand." "I see that, son. She likes me." "Of course she likes you. You're her brother." Ben looked up at Eliza, his eyes shining. "I'm going to be the best big brother ever. I'm going to teach her everything. How to read and ride and find the best rocks and—" "Slow down," Caleb laughed. "She can't even hold her head up yet." "I'll wait. I'm patient." Eliza and Caleb exchanged glances over their children's heads. Their children. All four of them now. "We did good," Caleb murmured. "We did." The autumn passed in a golden haze of new baby exhaustion and joy. Margaret Rose was an easy baby, as babies went. She slept in stretches long enough for Eliza to function. She nursed without difficulty. She smiled early, and often her dark eyes tracking her brothers wherever they went. Sam appointed himself her official protector. He checked on her before he went to bed each night, stood guard over her cradle, while Eliza did chores, carried her around the house when she was fussy. "You don't have to do that," Eliza told him. "I want to." "Why?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because I remember when Ben was a baby. Ma used to let me help with him. It was—" He struggled for words. "It made me feel important, like I mattered." "You matter, Sam. You've always mattered." "I know. But this is different." He looked down at his baby sister sleeping in his arms. "This is family." By Christmas, they'd settled into a new rhythm. The house was fuller now, louder, messier. There were always diapers to wash and babies to feed and children to wrangle. Some days Eliza was so tired she could barely see straight, but she'd never been happier. Christmas Eve they gathered around the fire, all five of them now. Caleb held Margaret while Eliza dozed against his shoulder. Sam and Ben argued good-naturedly about whose stocking was bigger. "You know what I was thinking about today?" Caleb said. "What?" "A year ago, Christmas Eve. We were just about to get married, and Edward Mercer had just burst through the church doors, and everything was falling apart." "I remember. And now, look at us." He gestured around the room at the tree Ben had insisted they cut at the stockings Martha had knitted at the baby in his arms, and the boys on the floor and the woman at his side. "A year ago, I didn't know if we'd make it through the winter. Now I can't imagine life without all this." "Me neither." "I'm glad you came, Eliza. I'm glad you stepped off that stagecoach and stayed. Where else would I go? Nowhere. That's my point. He kissed her temple. This is home. You made it home. We made it home. Together. The fire crackled. The children laughed. The baby cooed. And Eliza Morrison, who had traveled 1,000 miles to find her place in the world, finally understood what it meant to belong. Later that night, after the children were in bed and the fire had burned low, Caleb and Eliza sat on the porch one last time. The stars were out, scattered across the sky like promises. The wind was cold, but gentle. The ranch spread out before them, dark and quiet, waiting for spring. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb asked. "The woman I used to be, the one who answered your advertisement. What about her?" She was so scared, so desperate for something to change. She didn't know what she was walking into. She just knew she couldn't stay where she was. And now? Eliza looked at him. This man who had started as a stranger and become her whole world. "Now I know. Now I understand." She took his hand. "I came here looking for a new life. What I found was so much more. I found sons who needed a mother, a husband who needed a partner, a community that needed someone to fight for them. I found a family." "You found us." "I found myself." She squeezed his fingers. The woman who stepped off that stagecoach didn't know who she was, not really. She'd been William's wife, then William's widow. She'd been surviving, not living. But here... She gestured at the house, the land, the sky. "Here I became someone new, Eliza Morrison, wife, mother, fighter." "The woman who stayed." She smiled at that. "Yes, the woman who stayed." Caleb pulled her close, and they sat together watching the stars wheel overhead. "Any regrets?" he asked. "Not one." Not even anything. Every hard day, every scary moment, every time I wondered if I'd made the right choice, it all led here. To this. To us. I love you, Eliza Morrison. I love you too. Caleb Morrison. Forever. Forever, and then some. He kissed her under the Wyoming stars, and Eliza kissed him back with everything she had. 1,000 miles from where she'd started, in a house full of sleeping children on a ranch that had almost been lost, and then saved Eliza. Morrison had finally found what she'd spent her whole life looking for. Not a place, not a person, not even a family, though she had all of those now. She'd found herself, and that she knew was the greatest love story of all. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the promise of spring. The stars blazed overhead, ancient and eternal. And in the little house on the Double M Ranch, 5 hearts beat as one. Eliza closed her eyes, let herself feel it all. The cold air on her face, her husband's warmth beside her, the knowledge that their children were safe and sleeping, that the future was uncertain, but theirs. She had come here with nothing but a carpet bag and a hope. She would stay forever with everything she'd ever wanted. Because in the end, that was what it meant to come home. Not arriving somewhere new, but becoming someone true. And Eliza Morrison, the woman who came, the woman who fought, the woman who stayed, had never been more true in her life.